church, I wanted to give you guys the opportunity today, if you're either new or you're newer to the church, that there is an opportunity to connect. We're going to talk a lot about connection and a lot about that really scary word of relationship. But connecting with people within the church, connecting with people in relationship is what it's all about. Our relationship with God and then our relationship with other people. That's just what he loves the most. So if you have a chance, and before the ushers come around or before you even leave today, take a moment and fill out a Connect card. A little bit of information just gets us a way to contact you. If you want to know what's going on in the church this summer, if you want to know how to get your kids connected to other kids who also are so excited to come to church, fill out a Connect card. If you're in your later stages of life and you want other people to come around because, hey, I don't get to see them as much anymore, or I don't get to hang out with those kind of people, fill out a Connect card. We'll talk more about relationship as we move forward. But on the back side of this, if you have been connected, fill out the prayer request. There's something that's in your heart that you've been longing for, that you've been waiting for God to change. It hasn't happened yet. I implore you to fill out one of these prayer requests so that you can have a team of people praying for that with you. Literally, these get passed out to our leadership team, and our leadership team, they go on their knees for you. They come alongside you, praying for those things that you and your heart's desire are praying for as well. We're trying to get the kingdom to come yesterday. So allow us to help you in that area. So before we move on to announcements, I'm going to ask the ushers to go ahead and come on forward and we'll pray for tithes and offerings today. Now, I'm going to pull a Pastor Bert, and I filled my checkout because he didn't like technology much. And I am kind of following suit in that. But I filled out my check for tithes so that we can all pray over what we're giving to God today, and we can do it in a tangible way. So Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for the opportunity again to give into your kingdom, because we know that everything that we have is not really ours, it's yours. It's but a loan from heaven, and we are just merely giving back and just continuing to pour into what you're doing. Allow us to be your hands and feet, Jesus. And we know that the only way that we can do that is to give back to your kingdom. Whether time, talent, or treasure, Heavenly Father, we want to be there also. We thank you in your mighty name. Amen. And bless those that give. Now, as the bags get passed around, you're going to bear with me because we have 3 announcements. And I'm going to try to hit every point so that it's nice and clear. Okay, so first today, we have the men's night coming up. Now, I myself am married to a man, and he's going to be there. I mean, even if I have to drive him there and drop him off, he's going to be there because there might be some women in the kitchen making sure the men have food. You know, we're planning on it. We're working on it. We're working through the kinks. But June 10th, I want you all you men to be invited at 6 p.m. It's going to be a super fun, from what I hear, bonfire night, because men like fire. See? And as I was looking at the announcements this week, one of the statistics that I saw was that only 1 in 5 men really have somebody else to turn to. Somebody else that they actually believe is a friend that will be there for them. every man that will be at that bonfire night will either be that man for you or find somebody who will. To walk alongside of you, to be there. They might even be that guy that pulls the roof off and lowers you to the feet of Jesus. So come and enjoy some fellowship. I hear that there might be open fire roasting of meats. I mean, when I did women's events, it was like, what flowers are we going to put on the table? No. I hardly doubt there's going to be flowers on your tables. But you're going to have a great time. So second announcement of today is Prairie Days. I mean, I'm in one of those pictures. There's quite a few of us that are in those pictures. And if I went through my phone, I could find probably 80% of this church in those pictures. So if you haven't already signed up, sign-ups will be in the Connections cafe area on your way out. But also know that if you did sign up, there will be an informational meeting on June 4th after service. And just show up so that you can learn more about what your role is going to look like and how we get to love on the city of Yelm. So aside from that, we have youth summer camp coming up. I am super excited about Collide 23. Not only because it means that 3 of my children will be out of the house for almost a week, but also because I know what's going to be poured into them at camp. So one, if you'd like to learn a little bit more, there is we talked about technology. There's this code thing that you scan with your phone that you can get some more information on. But as well with that, there are some little ticket items here that you can grab from the ushers if you need a little bit more information. And you'll have to forgive me because I received the link that you're supposed to go to, but I didn't bring my phone up here. So if you need that link, feel free to just come to me after church and I'll make sure that you get the link to how to sign your kid up. But signups are $75 to hold your kid's spot if you don't have kids. If you are a grandma or a grandpa and you want to make sure some kids get to camp, feel free to donate. Feel free to give in that area to make sure that there are kids that can get to go to camp because we are trying to scholarship as many kids as we can so that cost is not an issue. Aside from that, today is Memorial Day weekend, and this one's going to get me. Because yesterday, I picked up my poppy. And I don't know if everybody knows what these poppies are, but I was a part of the American Legion from the time that I was practically born until into my 20s. And I'm pretty sure that if I reached out to the president, she would say that I still am because there's probably some grandma that's still paying my tuition and my dues. But I give to this every year that I see a veteran outside of a grocery store. Because 100% of this goes to our veterans and people that have lost their lives, their families. So Memorial Day is something about how we can remember about those that maybe have fallen and those families that have been left behind, their friends. And we have a little video for you. So go ahead and watch this.
How do we say thank you to those who gave everything? How do we honor the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom? We say thank you by remembering. Today, we honor our heroes. Lives given, not in vain, but with purpose. We stand grateful for their courage, their strength, and their resolve. For the fabric of America is stitched together by the thread of the brave. Today, we remember, and we will never forget.
If you are a veteran, active duty, can you raise your hand? It's definitely one of those things that when Veterans Day and Memorial Day come around, we're a community that's just interwoven with military, and I'd have it no other way. It's an amazing opportunity just to say thank you. I'm going to do things a little bit different because I'm not done talking about Collide. So I'm going to call my youngest daughter up for just a second. So many of you have heard me talk about Riley. Sarah, I need the mic. Many of you heard me talk about Riley. Riley just got back from Korea from the mission field. And she's going to go out again. But I wanted to ask her a couple questions about Collide because I know what Collide did in my own kids. So, hi, Riley.
Hi.
There you go. So, how old were you when you went to Collide? Do you remember? What grades?
I don't know. It was like 2017, 2018, maybe 2016 I was there too.
So here's what I remember. For those of you kids think I'm going to go to camp and it's going to be in Spokane and I have to ride a bus and it's a really long ways away and I'm going to be all by myself. Okay? So I'm a dad of girls. All that happens within a blink, okay? So it is kind of scary, but what did you get out of even the bus ride up there? Like as you went up there?
It was really hot.
It was really hot.
No, so they loaded us all into like two buses. There was a bus for the guys and a bus for the girls. No AC, super hot, but it's a good time to meet people because you're on a 6-hour bus ride. The first year that I went, I didn't know anyone there. So if you're feeling nervous about not knowing anyone, the first year I went, I didn't have a clue of anyone. Everyone had already grown up together. They all knew each other. But the bus ride is when I got to introduce myself, talk to people, and then you just get excited for getting there and what you get to do when you're there.
Can you tell she's my kid? Okay, so what did you think about the worship and the word?
Oh, the worship is insane. It's like a concert. Worshiping the Lord doesn't have to be in that way, but when it's a bunch of teenagers there, it just makes it easier to get involved. Everyone goes up front. You have a huge mosh pit. Everyone's jumping around. It's super fun. And I just remember, I was there, if you guys remember, Megan and Crystal, when the church first started. They were there with me the second year I was there, and I remember, one of the words had, wrecked me. And I was pretty young, and this is probably when I, really started my relationship with the Lord was in this time, and I just remember going to Crystal, and I maybe cried in her arms for 10 minutes straight, and she was just there helping me through it. And it's just so much going on during worship. There's people praying over each other. You just get to worship the Lord in whatever way you feel with no judgment, because everyone's just there to set their eyes on the Lord.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you tell these guys to do? Would they go? Should they? What? You're going to give them a 10, never mind. Was there stuff that kind of stuck with you? You know, the funny thing is that we were talking about this, and I saw you go to the lake this week, and the first towel you grabbed was your Collide towel.
Yeah.
So they give the kids towels, or they did then.
You get a swag bag.
And then I thought, I think Riley should get up here and say something about it. So I stole her from her home church today, which this is her home church as well, but I stole her from where she was going to go and just thought maybe you should just hear from someone who's been there. Thank you, Riley. I love you. I can remember their nervousness packing for camp and going there, and it's at the same camp that I was a counselor when I was a kid. And so we drove the kids through there because we had been there at one point or another. And it is an amazing time how many of you went to camp when you were a kid? Look at that. How many of you got something really good out of it, right? Came back supercharged and away you went. I get the privilege today to talk about the first chapter of Ruth. And if you're taking notes, it's going to say to be like Ruth. You know, you remember the Nike commercial where I think it was to be like Mike, to be like Michael Jordan, or to be whatever. I started getting into the book of Ruth, and I typically do this before I preach. If it's an area that I'm going to preach in, I listen to it online for a couple of reasons. Have you ever seen the names in the Old Testament? I'm going to say them, and I'm going to say them with great confidence, and we'll probably butcher them. I told Pastor Georgie, I believe that the people that came out of the South are actually Jewish. Now, stay with me here. My grandmother's name was Ophi. No, that's my grandfather. My grandfather's name was Ophi. My grandmother's name was Virgie. Those are not common names, and they're not very easy to say all the time. People got the Virgie part down, but my grandpa went by Jack. So you read through these, and I think it's really fun to listen to. Sarah had brought up Pastor Burt. He's a pastor emeritus at Living Water. Served before Pastor John and scared most of us. So in a good way, kind of a Billy Graham type way, and sometimes in a bad way, huh, Mark? So so that's kind of gives you that. Pastor Bob last week talked about a word, chesed. I'm only going to say it that way once because I can't spit on Sydney too many times. And so chesed. And so I just want to think about chesed as you hear today and we start talking about Ruth, because I'm going to bring it back. The thing that I like about chesed is it has more than one meaning. When we were in Hawaii, aloha means hello and goodbye. They just make it easy, right? One word for thank you, mahalo. They just make it easy. But you know, if you came from another country and English was your second language, you might struggle a little bit with how we say things. I certainly would struggle about how they say things, but the cool thing about a word with many meanings is you can plug it into a lot of different spaces and go, oh yeah, that is chesed. It means love. It means faithfulness. It means mercy, grace, kindness, loyalty, and devotion in one word, chesed. You can just set it in there and say, oh, Trish, that was amazing worship today. What you did for me was chesed. So it brought me to this loving moment of chesed. Now, I got to ask you, you know, for me, when you talk about knowing people or getting to know people, there's two ways that happens in my life. One, we literally just click. You ever had that person you just walked up to and you went, hey, oh, we're going to be friends. I can tell we're going to be friends. And two, sometimes it didn't quite click, but what it did was it took time to develop that relationship. And even the ones that just click, and I'm not talking about clicks, I'm talking about that just hit, right? They take time and you start to get to know each other. And I would say that over time, you give yourself a little bit of a significance of time, you can finish each other's sentences. You know what that person wants, you know what they like, you know what's going to happen. It's funny because I knew exactly what my friends would think if someone were to say, we're going to do this for Ian. I would go, I don't think Ian would like that. You know, whatever it might be, or he would really enjoy it, because you get to know what they like and what they don't like, right? So sometimes, though, that knowing takes time, like a marriage. When you're married to someone, when you first get married, it's super clunky. It's super clunky. Amen. That's not where I hang my stuff. This is where you hang your stuff. It's clunky, but over time, you just instinctively know what that person's going to say about whatever it might be, right? So you click, but sometimes it takes time. I'd like to think that we have that ability at Living Water Yelm, that we have time, for one, to really invest in each other. The barbecue, by the way, it's at Jeff Stepanik's house, and the address is out there on the sign. But this is just an opportunity to just have time, or what we call just shoulder time, just hanging out, just getting to know each other. Because a lot of times, like I said in my previous messages on relationship, we put on a church face on Sunday, and then Monday it's gone, but because we're afraid that people that's sitting out here are not going to like what they would see if it was Monday. And what you find out is as you start getting this friendship and you start woven this together, it's exactly the opposite. They want to see the real you. They don't want to see that smile that just says, oh, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm all right. And then Jeff goes, no, but really. And you go, my life's a mess. My life's a complete wreck. You know, I mean, anybody that's had the but really out of Pastor Jeff, it's something else. So he knows how to talk to people. We want to do life together. We just want to be around the people that we do this. Now, it was probably the first time that I ever preached here at Living Water, or the second. But as I was preaching, I saw a family. They were new to Living Water, and they were sitting right there. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm going to get to know this family a little bit because I'd never seen them. He's wearing a black cowboy hat, so therefore, we're good. He speaks my language. Speaking of which, Pastor Bob's encouragement to me today was, don't get hung up on the shoot. There's no reride. So, and I said, have I rubbed off on you? He said, no, Google did. So he was trying to encourage me along the way. But it was right over there. And I ended up preaching straight to my friend, who is my friend today. You know, I find those people in the audience that you look at and you kind of get drawn to. And I was like, man, I want to get to know this guy. I want to know him because I think that there could be something there. Now, here's the deal between firefighters and people in the military. We speak kind of the same language. We speak brotherhood. We speak loyalty. Chesed. See? And so you start grabbing that and you go, okay, well, I got to know their kids. And if you don't know me, I'm a dad of daughters. I have a son as well, but really a dad of daughters. I thought at first I wasn't sure what God was giving me when girls started coming. But I learned a lot of things. And so one of the things that I like to do is, as my girls have taught me, I like to just kind of plug into the girls and talk to them and just, you know, be there. Well, a few Sundays ago, there was a gentleman sitting over here. Forgive me, I don't know his name, but Mark does. He's a friend of Mark's, and he's a friend of Pastor Bob's. And at the end of that, Nevaeh and Sydney came up, and I don't know if London was there, but they came up, and the guy turns to them and says, hey, how do you know him? Without even a hitch, they said, he's my uncle. Not even a hitch. And she just, and I didn't even explain. I just said, okay, that's cool. So just so you know, that spoke chesed to me, because there's some stuff that really goes in there, right? And so when she said that, my heart melts. I'm like, ooh. And I told Jennifer, it made my day. I said the girls called me their uncle. But when you get to know each other and you get to know the Smiths, what you know about them is they're real people. They don't fake it. And so for me, it's really the story that we're going to talk about today, is somebody who didn't fake it and somebody was real. And it was an amazing opportunity to talk about both Ruth and Naomi. Now, I don't know about you, but I've had many women in my life that have guided my ship. So part of Foursquare Pastoral Licensing is a whole thing called Women's in the Ministry. And they really want to, it's in there lots of times. They want to make sure that you line with that. And I'm like, align with that? I live it. The women in this church, Jerry, some of the other women in this church that have literally, Colette, who have literally spoken to my life and ministered to me in one way or the other. Now, I don't want to think that I'm just picking on one person. I can look around this room and all of you I can connect to the same way. So it's not just the Smith family, although they are amazing people. It's all of you. And sometimes it's taken time, sometimes it hasn't. But my heart just kind of melted because, you know, it's one of those things. It's that connection. And with the girls, I connected with the girls probably faster than they connected with their parents. And then the parents came later. We conquered, didn't we, girls? So there you go. So Ruth chapter 1. So if you find Ruth, it's between Judges and my favorite book in the Bible. That means I'm looking for you to turn there. Ruth chapter 1. So it's snuggled into the Old Testament, and it's only 4 chapters. That does not mean anything about how significant it is. But there's some cool things about this as well. So if you just turn there in your Bible to page 323, okay, maybe that's just my Bible, but like Pastor Bob goes, that was a joke. I thought people would laugh. Sorry, Bob. So to turn to that spot, and we're just going to kind of stick right there. There's only one scripture that will change, and that'll be in James, and it'll be later on, but we're going to stick right with Ruth chapter 1. So Ruth chapter 1 starts it this way. In the day when there was judges who ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man of Bethlehem and Judea, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live in a country called Moab. Now, in reality, where Moab is, where we think, okay, it's a country, it's a long ways away, it's like counties in the state. It's about 50 miles away from where Bethlehem is to Moab. But you have to go around the Dead Sea to get there. There's a map of it. So you look at that, those are 2 specific countries, Judea and Moab. So there's a famine in the land. So the 2 sons, they all pack up and away they go. Verse 2, the man's name was Elimelech. See, good southern name. Elimelech. And his wife's name was Naomi. And they had 2 sons, Malachon and Chilion. And so these 2, they were of Euphrates from Bethlehem and Judea. So they're basically saying they were from Pierce County, just off from Tacoma. That's how they're kind of saying what it is. Now, the Old Testament's very big into names, and it's very big into locations. There's specifics. How many of you got your first Bible, and you turned to the back of it, and there were maps in the back, and you had no idea why the maps were there? Here it is. It's out of your page of your Bible. That's where that is. It's to kind of give you an idea how far it is to be there. So they move, and they go, and they live there. Now, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women. One of them's name was Orpah, and the other's name was Ruth. But after they lived there about 10 years, the 2 sons die. Now, you remember Pastor Bob may have said that Naomi was very much a female version of who? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I knew that was going to come from the back row. So it's kind of a female. She's starting to lose everything here. And she doesn't have her sons. So things are really going the wrong way for Naomi. First of all, she's left everything she ever knew, and she had to travel. Now, that travel between Bethlehem and Moab was not exactly, but about 50 miles. No big deal for us today. We're there in an hour. It would take a week or so because they're taking all of their belongings. They're literally leaving Bethlehem because there's a famine in the land. They can't feed it. And what Elimelech says is, I got to figure out a way to provide for my family. I can't let them die in Bethlehem. And then I'm going to take them out of Bethlehem, and I'm going to take them to Moab where there's food and there's places to go. But it's a land they have no idea what it's about. Pretty scary move to pack up and leave everything you ever knew and move. Scary. No, I can say this about the Smiths. They've done it a couple of times. They came here from Japan. Probably took more than 5 days and worth of stuff to get it over here. But, they came a long ways. And so you start thinking about where they're sitting and what's the reasons there's a famine in the land. Well, this is during the day of Judges. There's no king in the land. What do you know about the Jewish people when they are left alone? They walk for 40 years because they can't follow instructions, right? They can't quite get it down. So there's basically 4 or 5 judges in there. One of them was Gideon. Gideon's Bible was one of the judges. Now, the judges, they all have their own thing. They all think their different ways. They're not united in what they do. They would go to one judge for this and one judge for that. And so it created chaos, and they pretty much let the land go. Now, again, these people they weren't really good at just hanging and portioning things. And they believe one of the reasons why the famine was there, although there's many reasons there's famines that happen there, but one of them is just pure gluttony. What was there in those storehouses, nobody was telling them no. So guess what? The one with the biggest guns win. And they go and they take all the food. Certainly could have been one of the reasons. But it's funny that it happens to be Bethlehem, because in the words or the definitions, here is Bethlehem. I love it, okay? So Bethlehem in local languages, in Arabic, it literally means house of meat. And then Bethlehem in Hebrew means house of bread or food. Where's the famine? What happened to this? So God doesn't, how many of you know that God doesn't leave you because you messed up? Amen? I'm glad, because he left me a long time ago. He doesn't leave you because you've messed up, but we learn a lot of lessons out of the Old Testament. I love the Old Testament, minus the names. But I love the Old Testament, I really do. So you've got your family, you've included them, you've got them all going, and you're going to greener pastures. You bring them over to greener pastures, and I mean, it's the second verse that says Amalek dies. One would think that happened pretty quick. Now, the life expectancy back then was a little different than the life expectancy today, but here's Naomi, who's there with her 3 sons, who marry people from Moab. Now, Moab did not worship God. They had little g gods, and that's an important part when we start talking about what happens as it moves into this, is that they came into the family, but they really didn't know God until they got to the family. So really, if it's appearing in the first couple of verses, that makes you think, here we go. So Orpah and Ruth are 2 of the daughter-in-laws of these people. Daughter-in-laws. Now that's interesting family dynamic, in-law stuff, right? And so getting to know and really to work into a family. Because you have your own traditions, you have your own things that you bring in, right? And then they have their own things that they bring in. And in this particular case, they had different gods that they worshiped. My guess is not for long. Because when you hear the one true God, you turn your back on the other gods. I gotta say that one again. When you hear the one true God, you turn your back on the other gods. And so it's important to think about that. So now 10 years later, here she is in Moab with just women. No, I don't mean it that way, but it's a different time. And women without husbands were vulnerable. They could be attacked. There was just all these things that made them vulnerable. The sons have died, so Naomi now is stuck in some pretty weird situations, being in a spot where she doesn't know where she's going. Verse 6 says this: when Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to aid the people, providing food for them, she said to her daughter-in-laws, prepare to return home from there. The 2 daughter-in-laws that she left in the place, she said, were living, and they sat out on the road, and they became part of the land of Judah. But when you look at what the daughter-in-laws are going to do in this, with the 2 daughter-in-laws, she left this place where she said she was leaving, and she sat out on the road to go back to Judea. So she's leaving. She's got the 2 daughter-in-laws. They're there. She gets partway through and she goes, they don't belong with me. They're not my clan. Now, you can take this in a couple of different ways. They've been together for 10 years. They're learning to finish each other's sentences at 10 years. They're not just acquaintances, but Naomi is wrecked. She doesn't know what to do. She's lost her sons. She's lost her husband, and now she's in a weird spot. But she hears that Bethlehem is okay now, 10 years later. That God somehow has done this. So she goes, what do you do in that situation when you are somewhere where you don't know and home looks really good? You go home. Now, these ladies had never left Moab. They've always been there. In verse 8, Naomi says to the 2 daughters, go back, each of you, to your mother's home, because that's the tradition, is you're not married anymore, you're not part of this, go to your own mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness, and may the Lord show you kindness as he's shown kindness to your dead husbands and me. May the Lord grant each of you the will of rest and the home of another husband. So really, she's saying to them, I hope you find another husband, because I know how life is without it. You're vulnerable, you're in those weird spots, and away you go. Then she kissed them goodbye, wept out loud, and said to her, we'll go back to your people. Now, the funny thing is something happens between the 2 sisters-in-laws. All right? There's two absolutely different responses to this. Okay? Orpha's response is, I'm crying and weeping because I'm going to miss you, but see you later, I'm going home. Ruth's response was something that was probably one of the most admirable responses I've ever seen come out of the Bible. And it's amazing how this all laid out. But when Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave, this is verse 16, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Anybody remember a video up here a couple of weeks ago? You go, I go, we go. And that's where Ruth is. She's like, no, we're together. I don't care what you say. I'm not going back to my mother's house. I belong where you are. It says, and where you stay, I will stay. Where your people are my people. Where your God is my God. Where you die, I will die, and I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me and be ever severity to the death if we get separated. When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go, she stopped urging her. So Ruth's a little bullheaded, and she knows it. She goes, I'm not going to win this battle. There's just no way. She's going, look, no, where you go, I go. Where you die, I'm going to die. They're going to bury me right next to you because we are now family and we're connected. Hesed. How many different spots of Hesed do you see in that? Where you go, I go, we're connected. Remember the devoted part of Hesed. And he says, look, I'm not going to stop you from doing this. You can come, all right? No problem. So Ruth really did show all of these: love, faithfulness, mercy, grace, kindness, loyalty, devotion. Now, I believe that Ruth knew that Naomi was broken and hurt and that she couldn't do life alone, even though she was going back home. The travel, the 50 miles from Moab over to Bethlehem, one woman by herself, the chances of her surviving, not great. But I think there was more to it. I think because they had that Hesed, that wovenness in there, that she goes, no, I'm sorry. I'm part of your family now. I'm not part of that family. The New Testament will say leave and cleave, right? When you get married, you leave and you cleave to your husband. Well, in this case, she left and she cleaved to the family that was there. She wasn't going to let go. She wasn't going to stop. And it didn't matter what the response was. Naomi knew she had kind of lost the battle. So in verse 19, the two women, they went up into Bethlehem. And when they arrived to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because they were there. It's home. I am home. And the whole town is like, Naomi, we've missed you. It's been 10 years. Who's this? Who's with you? And he says, but here's Naomi's response. She says in verse 20, don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. Because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me, and Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. Now understand, Naomi means this: pleasant. At this point in her life, Naomi's not pleasant. How many of you have gone through things in your life where somebody happy, you just want to throat punch them? I'm serious. I'm going through something and I don't want to deal with this. Naomi's in that spot in her life. Don't call me pleasant because right now I'm not pleasant, but Mara means bitter. And so what Naomi's not going to recognize out of all of this is that there's a great thing that's going to happen. If you start doing how things lay out, Ruth is the great-grandmother of King David. Wow. Would that have happened if she'd have stayed in Moab? No, it wouldn't have happened. God had a design. When you're going through things that are painful to you, you may turn it and say, God's done this to me. I've been there. You've never been in a spot where you looked at God and shook your fist? And you remember how God defends himself? Right here. Come on. I know you're angry. Take it out on me. You know, I don't talk to God like this, the almighty Lord of all. I'm like, yo, really? Really? This is what's going on? So, and I had said in one of my other messages that was grateful for the past, I couldn't go through today what I go through today if I didn't go through what I went through yesterday. Right? So we lose sight of that in the middle of the battle of this. And you know what? Naomi is human. She's a great woman. She really is. You read this and you kind of think she's in a pity party. You kind of think, oh, I'm not going to join. All of you just leave me alone and go away. But in reality, what she's saying is, I really do want you to be here. You know, it's kind of like the word whatever. You can say whatever a lot of different ways. It has a lot of different meanings, right? Whatever. 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 You know, that has a lot of different meanings. So, but when you start talking about chesed with all of its meanings, they all point to one thing: grace, love, all of the things that embody Jesus. And Jesus hadn't even been there yet. But if it embodies the Father, it's going to embody the Son. So you may think to yourself, when she says, I want your God to be my God, that's an easy thing. I've recently spoke to a few people just recently that are Latter-day Saints that have come out of the Latter-day Saints. That's not easy for them. You think, oh, you'll be fine, just accept the one Jesus. The only thing they knew was what the Latter-day Saints had taught them. That's all they knew. Ruth's in the same spot, but she's learning. She spent 10 years learning about how God, the one true God, works, and she's not willing to leave this alone. Your God is my God. I'm going to trust and go towards him because I know he's the one true God. If I go back to Moab with my family, they don't worship the one true God. And once God has got into your life and into you, he doesn't let you go, and you don't let him go. And so that's not even an option when it comes to Ruth. She's like, nope, not even an option. Very strong woman. Now, how do we react when we get into adversity? You know, you look at Naomi and go, oh, it's a pity party. It's not. It's not a pity party. It's not. She's in a bad spot. You've all been in bad spots before, too. I wear my emotions right here on my sleeve. If I'm having a bad day, it shows here. It does. And when you start having that intertwining of a relationship, you can see someone and know that they're not okay. And even though they say it, I'm okay. They just don't want to bother you with what it is. And I've said this before, I find myself on just a normal phone conversation, hey, how are you? My name is, and I don't wait for the response. God waits for the response. How are you? How can I be with you? How can I help you? What can I do? And you could be shaking your fist at him and say, how could you do this? And you're going to find out 3 years down the road, he didn't do it. We point at the things that bad that are happening, and we shake our fist at God. Those bad things happen because of humanity. In the garden, we messed up, but he gives grace. We weren't meant to have pain. We weren't meant to see these things, but guess what? It happened. And so now we're living this out. I just thought it was so cool because David's one of my favorite people in the Bible. David and Paul are both my favorite. I love David because he messes up over and over and over again, and God says, oh, you're my beloved. And he does this, and he teaches David, and he says, listen, I know you're after my own heart. And so Ruth is going to be the great-grandmother of the I'm after my own heart. Pretty amazing if you think about it, because here's what she's showing with Chesed. She's showing that being one people. They have to wonder if it's really Chesed, how do you know it's Chesed today? How can you do it? And I know Bob's word was Chesed, but it's all over this, right? It is all over this message. How can I do that? What can I do with Chesed? Well, the great prophet Michael Jackson said this, I'm looking at the man in the mirror. Now, here's the different thing. If the man in the mirror is representing Jesus, then what you're seeing in the mirror is a good thing. I'm looking at the man in the mirror, right? So you gotta really kind of figure this out. I love the fact that there's dedication in this whole story. You go, we go. Wherever you go, I'm going to be buried right next to you. I'm going to be right there. You will not ever be alone, Ruth says. I'm going to be there. Now, the other chapters are going to kind of get into this, but Ruth does amazing things. Naomi's hurting, and Ruth goes, I love you. Your God's my God. Your pain's my pain. And away we go. Pretty cool thing, I think, when you look at the whole picture of it and how Ruth is going to really help shape Naomi and pull her out of this. Because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be Ruth. We're supposed to really look at someone and say, not just how are you, but come here, London. Come here. How can I pull you out of this? I'm not letting go. You're not going to drown. Thank you. How can I do that? And so that's where Ruth is. Ruth steps in. She goes outside of her comfort zone. The only country she's ever known is Moab. And she's going to Bethlehem. It's 50 miles away. I get it. It might as well be 5,000 miles away in our terms. It's a long ways away. Different customs, different God, different everything. So Ruth steps out of there and she goes, you know what? I'm a risk taker. I'm going to go with you. But it's not a risk. Because your God, big G, is my God, big G. And so I need to learn how to deal with this. And I need to be by your side. She knew she couldn't turn back. There was no turning back. So I have to ask you, are there famines in your life? Do you go through famines? Do you ever feel dry? I told Pastor Mike one time, I called him and I said, I just feel so dry. I'm just so dry. You want to hear his response? Suck it up. You're in leadership. Figure out how to get wet again. Okay. There you go. That's a true friend. A true friend doesn't go, oh, come here. That's not Mike and Mike's response to each other. It's like, okay, you feel dry? Fix it. You don't get to lead that way. You have to fix that. So what I do? I started worshiping. And guess where the dryness goes? And you know where I went? Hymns. The songs of my day when I was a kid in a little four-square church in northern Idaho that had the steeple and pews and everything else in there. But the hymns that brought me back to my grandmother singing into my ear, not the greatest, my grandmother singing into my ear, my mom and dad all in the same pew, Bibles not under the pew because my dad would have whacked me in the head if I put my Bible underneath my chair, Bible sitting right there, family all around me, and that was Hesed. And I knew that I could draw from that, and I can be there. It just takes me back there. And so it's when you're going through the hard times, that's when you put your head down and you push. It's rodeo season, so that's when you cowboy up. You get back on the horse. You ride the horse whether it throws you off or not. Sorry. I just had a picture of Isaac getting thrown off a horse. He shared the video. I was like, that's not supposed to happen that way. So you get back on the horse. You grab people that are around you, and you say, my life sucks right now. Can you go where I go? Can your God be my God? Can you drive me back to the cross? I walked the wrong way. The cross is over there. Can that happen? Because it's just that connection between Ruth and between Naomi that Naomi is going to survive because she wouldn't have. And I think Ruth knew that. I think Ruth knew, okay, I get that the other daughter-in-laws are over here. And I probably messed their names up. Please forgive me. But I get that their daughter-in-laws are over here. But you know what? I'm more than that to you. We're connected. And you've shown me your God. And I want to be with you. So when we're going through those times, and we really struggle through those times, we tend to want to withdraw. We don't want to be around people. We don't answer phones. We go into our caves. And there are people here that can be your Ruth. And you're, as my grandmother would say, you're robbing them from their blessing. And their blessing is to bless you. Because we all go through really hard times. And if you can get somebody that's with you, grabs her hand like that with I grabbed London's hand and walks me over this direction and says, I can take you somewhere where you can be healed. I can take you somewhere where there's life, where there's feast, where you thought it was a famine. Because honestly, we all have famines in our lives. We do. And I love James. James is one of my favorite books. If you're one of my guys that I work with on a pretty regular basis, we hang out in James a lot. We do. Because he's a pretty smart guy. But my head got twisted a little bit over this one, and I thought, okay, I got it. So James 1, verse 2 says this, consider it pure joy, brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing will bring faith and makes preservation. It preserves you. Let that I can't say it. Perseverance. Thank you. Let that perseverance finish the work so that you may mature, become complete, and not be lacking. When we're going through it, we think we can't do it. But in the end, he shows us how strong we are. How many of you had those times in your life where you just say, I can't do this? I can't do this. I can't go along with this. Well, we serve a God that says, I can do this. And he says to you this, look, here it is. Perseverance, hang in there, put your head down. That's what that means. Don't stop. You keep moving forward, and you never stop. I've seen this in my life a lot of different times from a lot of different people, and I've lived it over the last 5 years, where I could have just laid everything down and said, forget it, I'm not going to do anything with this, I'm leaving. I've had enough. I can't take the pain. I don't want to be around you smiling people at church. I'm serious, I was there. People in the room were with me when I was going through that. I don't want to be around you people who are smiling, because I just want to throw punch you. And that's from somebody in leadership. It's horrible, isn't it? But you're going through that, and you don't see the end, which says that you're going to become mature, complete, lacking nothing. All you see is what's right in front of your face. I think Ruth saw the end. I think she understood, and we're going to go through this, but in the end, we're not going to be lacking. We're going to be okay. It's going to work out. Pain can make us really bitter. It made Naomi bitter, didn't it? She goes, hey, don't call me pleasant. That ain't me. Call me Mara. I'm bitter. Do you know that pain's the easiest emotion to grab? Anger is right there. So anger is the easiest. Pain pushes anger to the top. So you have to get past both of those to get down to something that's really cultivating you. You have to let those two layers go in order to see what happens in the end. You got to cowboy up. When the horse throws you off the horse, you go, oh, I don't think I'm going to ride that way again. I'm going to ride this way. And I'm going to get back on the horse, and I'm going to ride it a different way so I don't get thrown off again. And I think that happens to us in life over and over and over again, where we go, I can't get back on this horse. And the horse is just looking at you going, come on, let's go, let's ride. I didn't throw you, you fell off. Did you hear what I just said? I didn't throw you, you fell off. We tend to fall off of a lot of stuff. And I think the whole thing with Ruth was she's like, I'm not going to let Naomi fall off. She could have gone back into poverty. She could have gone back into a lot of different things. But it's how you handle those trials in your life that refines you, not defines you. In the end, it might define you, but I don't know. Jamie, you can come up. So in closing, when we look at this story, there's some things that I want you to take out of this. First of all, bad things, they're going to happen. They are. It's how you respond to them that makes them either worse or better. They're going to happen. You can choose to be someone's Ruth, or you can choose to be someone's Naomi. What's your choice? You can just get in their pity party and away you go and make things worse, or you can say, how, Lord, can I make this person my person, their God my God, their pain my pain? We got a great opportunity to be Ruths to other people. So then you start looking about, are our friends taking us closer to Jesus or further away? You know, it's okay to have healthy boundaries, right? It's okay to be healthy with that, to understand and to put up some boundaries if someone's pulling you away from the cross. Your Ruths in your life are grabbing your hand, walking to the cross, kneeling down at the cross with you, praying through your pain, walking through it to see victory at the other end. I want to be like Ruth. I don't want to be like Naomi. Although my flesh cries out like Naomi, I can get in a pity party faster than anybody else. I'm really fast at it. Just pity party and away I go. So you can do that. Faith preserves you and it gives you perseverance, the ability to move on. Faith, family, friends, I probably would have been wrecked many times in my life without those things. The Ruths in my life, my grandmother, my mother, I can name, like I said, so many women that were the Ruths in my life that had a way of speaking with empathy that sometimes men lack. We just say, suck it up, get wet, don't be dry, figure out a way to do it. But the cool thing about you women that I love so much is that the feelings that you have, you can easily extend those feelings to someone else, and you can just drag them along with you. You can just, come on, I'm gonna bring you right over to this cross. You are not alone. If you're going through the famines in your life, if you're going through the pains of your life, you are not alone. Now, you can choose to be alone. You can. We talk about these connect cards that are in front of us, left and right. We put the connect cards out, and we say, here you go, here's a connect card. Put your prayer requests on those. You're not alone. We'll pray over them with you. Every Sunday, there's somebody standing over here that will pray over things with you. There's a whole audience, a congregation up here that's full of Ruths that you can lean on. Listen, folks, in the fall, we're pushing life groups hard. We believe it's a foundation of people being Ruths to people. The leadership, pastoral staff, we don't know what you're going through, but if you're in a small group of 10 people and you're getting to do life with them, you're going from Moab to Bethlehem with them, and you're walking it from spot to spot. One of the churches I went to in the life groups, they called the leaders mini pastors. Many churches with many pastors. And the cool thing is a lot of times it never had to go past that. Now, Isaac's in the military, I'm in the fire service, we have a chain of command, right? I shouldn't be hearing stuff that my lieutenants didn't hear before me. So you get a chance to be the lieutenants and deal with them and then let us know what's going on, connecting people really with life and walking through it with them. Whether it's taking meals to someone or whether it's just, I'm having a really hard time, come on over, my door's open. We'll go shoot air guns off the back deck. Or maybe bigger guns, who knows. But you're not alone. You're not alone. The enemy wants you to be alone. The enemy used COVID as a weapon to isolate you. Guess what? COVID's over. You're not alone. It's so nice to see the seats full in here and see the seats filling up, and we're looking forward to it going even further. But it's because of disciples who make disciples that'll make that happen. People who become Ruth to someone else and says, you know what? I mean, I have all the answers. I'm around a lot of really cool people, and come on in. And just sit out here and see what you're doing. God's going to take you out of your comfort zone like he does with everything good. He'll bend you. He won't break you. He'll get you close. He'll get you close where you go, okay, really? That's my thing with him. Really? You can borrow it if you want to. If you go through something painful, then let a Ruth help you with that. Get out of your comfort zone. Go to bonfires. Go to bunkos. Go to small groups. Go to EHS. It's coming again in the fall. Go to EHR, Emotionally Healthy Relationships, which is going to be part of that group. And start learning how to be Ruth. Because what I see out here is a ton of Ruths. I know that because you've all been that to me. When you're going through all of that, you got those choices. Now, Ruth, what she did is she stood in the gap for Naomi. Even though Naomi was messed up, she said, I got you. I'm going to stand in the gap for you. I see people in this room that have stood in the gap for me. It's a Ruth. Stand in the gap. I also know people in this room that are hurting and dealing with it all by themselves. You can do that. You can. But let me tell you what the enemy will always tell you, that you're not worth anything in those moments, or that whatever you're dealing with is bigger than the God that you serve. That's where the Ruths of this family step in and say, no, I don't think you get to be alone. Because your God is my God. Where you go, I'll go. Where they bury you, they're going to bury me. And all we have to do is have those people that are there. So you might be going through a famine in your life where you're thinking to yourself, I just don't get God. Hey, I've been a Christian my whole life, and guess what? That happens to me a lot. Really? Really? But here's the thing is I have a whole bunch of people in this room and online that get God and that will grab your hand, pull you to the cross, say, I understand where you are in your spot of famine. I get it, but I want to pull you out of the land that you're in and into the land of milk and honey. I want you to know the Jesus that I know. Now, I've said it before, being a Christian isn't easy. The Bible says it takes the narrow road. But a narrow road with friends in front of me and friends in back of me, I'll take any day over a 4-lane highway with people waving at me with one finger. Their thumb, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? I will pack wherever, as long as I know that the people in front and back of me have my back and have my front. That's Hesed, and that's Ruth. Pretty amazing thing. So now you get the opportunity to be a little bit real. This is a pastor thing, I know. But I also know that you're probably not willing to say it in any other way than this one. But I'm going to get you to bow your heads, close your eyes. And there's a follow-up to this. Do you know that Jesus holds us accountable to things? And so we're going to hold some folks accountable. If you're going through that famine in your life where you need a Ruth, can you just raise your hand? Oh, all over. All over. Okay, put them back down. Now I'm going to ask something really big. I'm going to have you raise your hands again. And there's some of you that didn't raise your hand. It's okay. Only I saw it. I'm not going to tell. I want you to stand where you're at if you were the person that raised your hand. And the reason why I want to do that is because the Ruths in this family are going to come around you. So if you rose your hand and I saw them all over, please stand up. It's scary. It's a big deal to do this. And I get it. I want to tell you, I'm standing with you. I'm standing with you. To stand up when you're going through those things, to say, hey, I need a Ruth, is a big deal. Now, church, this is your chance. You see people standing here. I want you to surround them, and we're going to pray for a few minutes, and Jamie and the band are going to do a worship song. And I want to just have some time where you get to be Ruths to someone and connect with that person that's standing. Let's go ahead and do it, church.